Is it possible to be self-sufficient in a suburban setting in an average-sized garden? That's what I'm trying to find out. So welcome to the channel, Sustainability in the Suburbs. About 3 or 4 years ago, I dug a hole in the garden. The aim of this hole was to build a greenhouse. It extends the growing season a bit deeper into the winter with the natural insulation from the earth. Also, it gave me a little extra headroom, just because in the suburban setting you've only got so far up you can take a building before you extra planning permission is required. So that little extra headroom would give us different options with growing different crops. In this area we've got quite a high water table, so I had to line the outsides of the greenhouse or the hole with concrete in order to stop it flooding. So we built some shuttering around the outsides. Shuttering's like a timber frame with plywood and timber, which stops the concrete from just filling up the hole, so it sticks more to the sides of the walls. So once the shuttering was completed, we got in the concrete truck and poured the concrete into the hole. Turns out when it comes in a concrete truck it's quite wet, so it just started filling up the hole anyway, so we had to stop the pour and wait for it to set, and then I had to finish the rest manually. Just before, while it was still wet though, my old man had a great idea of pushing a bucket down into the corner of one area of the concrete and weighing it down with rocks. Turns out to be a great idea because it gave us a low point in order that we could drain the hole a lot easier. So once it had set and the rest of the concrete had been done by hand, which hats off to anyone that does concreting for a living, that's hard, very hard. So once the concrete was up to the right level and set, the next stage was taking out the shuttering. Once the shuttering had come out though, we had another happy accident. So it had left a channel around the outsides of the hole, which in hindsight we probably should have put in the design anyway, because it's formed a beautiful drainage area, and then all I had to do was angle grind out down to the sump, and perfect drainage area for the whole, for the room. And considering aquaponics is heavily involves water and likelihood of leaking is quite high, then it should have been in the plans originally anyway. Maybe it's just someone helping out. So I wanted to go with double glazing windows to give us that bit of extra warmth and supply the surrounds as well. So looking at on eBay for lots of second-hand windows, and I found the cheapest option and best option was to get an old conservatory. So the complete conservatory came with doors and all the windows. The only problem was it was still attached to someone's house, and it was the middle of the winter and it was snowing, and they wanted rid, but it was cheap, but they wanted rid of it quite soon. So another great idea of mine involved me taking down somebody else's conservatory in the middle of winter in the snow, which was fantastic. Once we got it back though, we could design the building around the windows that we got. Before, however, we started on the build of the next of the greenhouse, I decided to lay the foundations because I'd got a love of concrete at that time. So I dug the foundations for the mushroom shed. As I was going through the process of laying for the mushroom shed, I had in the long game of building a sauna, so I thought might as well just do those at the same time. So we had the pads down for the sauna and for the mushroom shed, so all the foundations were laid. However, those two projects were supposed to be after I'd finished the aquaponics, so now 3 projects instead of 1. Hindsight, I should have finished them one at a time, but you know, why do things the easy way? So the next, after all the foundations were complete, the next summer, constructing the greenhouse. So 2 sides of it were built with a frame corrugated metal, and then the remaining 2 from the conservatory that we collected. So we got these up and we see-through polycarbonate roof on, and it became watertight and started to look like we were getting somewhere. Around this time, I bumped into the biggest challenge yet of the journey. I received notification from the council that there'd been a dispute on the planning, and even though I'd been through the guidelines and also enlisted the help of a planning officer that had since retired, I couldn't help doubting the fact that the building met the regulations. So for the next 6 to 8 months I felt like the whole project had been torpedoed, and the possibility that it might all be over before it begun was quite a hard one to carry. So rather than carrying on with the aquaponics systems, what I decided to do was to build the sheds, because there was no issue with the sheds. They were far away from the edges of the boundary, so I began building the frames for the sheds and constructed those out of wooden panelling with a corrugated tin roof. Sounds great in the rain. The finished the exterior of the sauna and the mushroom shed. It kind of all turned into one building, one big shed, but like kind of split into sections. So that all the exterior got finished, and then I had to start. Still hadn't heard back from the planning, so we insulated the insides of the mushroom shed and the ceiling, because it needs to be quite well temperature regulated in order to create the right environment for the growing of the mushrooms. Once this was done, it was heading into the winter around that time, so we decided to get painted it all white. Wasn't sure what I was going to do with the walls up until that point, because it's got to be humidity proof, because we're going to put some humidity into the air to help with the mushroom growing as well. Then so my attention turned back towards the sauna. So around this time, what quite a happy coincidence happened. Turns out one of my friends that I used to go drinking with as a teenager now owned a bespoke sauna company that up and down the country. So I was able to hit him up for some advice about the construction of the sauna. Turns out he's a legend and gave me the materials for building the thing as well. So with it insulated and panelled, all according to expert advice, it's starting to take shape. So I'm at the point now where I've got all the buildings done on the outside, and some of the insides. Nearly finished the sauna, just need some electrics in the sheds and the garage. And then there was a huge windstorm which took down a massive tree that's right next to the sheds. Luckily for me, it went the opposite direction to all the newly constructed sheds. Unlucky for the new neighbours, it landed on top of their shed and took out 2 of their trees as well on the way down. Turns out though they're really nice people, and they weren't too concerned. I think they wanted a new shed anyway. I had to build a new fence. Following chopping the tree down, chopping the tree up, so I had to chop the tree up with a chainsaw, which took quite a while, and slowly moving that back round, but it meant I had massive amounts of wood and nowhere to store them. So I decided to build a wood store on the back of the greenhouse, which with a couple of concrete posts and some tin roofing, and now I've got a dry storage area for all the wood. So once that was completed, shortly after, the fence on the other side came down because it was overlaid with ivy, so I had to replace the fence on that side. It just kept coming at this point, hit after hit after hit. So back into the new mushroom shed, I found out that the inside of that was leaking, so I had to get a new garage roof. So we had to replace the garage roof. I decided to get someone in to do that because the idea of it not being watertight through my attempts of fixing it just didn't bear thinking about, because it set me back already like quite a way. So I thought I'd get a professional in to do the garage roof. He recommended fiberglass because I like the idea of being able to walk on it, and also in case for when we put the solar panels on at a later date, it'll be easy to seal over the mounting brackets with extra fiberglass. the whiskey cask had arrived as well. And I'd forgotten how much I hate digging, so dug a hole in the garden, which took a while because it's quite a big whiskey cask, and I put it in and started to bury it. So the cask has got a leak and it's just fast enough to make it irritating. So I'm trying to look for ideas about how to fix it at the moment. So any suggestions would be great. I'm at the moment thinking about either fiberglass in the inside of it or some sort of liner. And I actually use a sump pump to pump it out, which is another thing I could have really thought of before I buried it in the garden. So after all this, now I'm in the clear from the council. This is back last summer. It was time to start building the grow beds for the aquaponics setup. So I constructed them all out of timber frames and plywood, and lined them with rubber and got them all ready to be plumbed in and ready to go. Shortly after this is where we had the second big setback, which was the flooding. So there was a heavy summer storm, and the rain just kept coming, and it ended up running into the greenhouse and filling the insides of the greenhouse up with water, which was, considering the greenhouse had been empty for so long, and now all of a sudden I got some grow beds in it, and then it decided to flood, was very frustrating because I couldn't get to see what was happening and where it was coming from. But I started to think it was coming through the concrete, but after crawling around on my hands and knees, once I'd eventually got it pumped out, I discovered I didn't think it was coming through the concrete, because which was a good outcome, because I started to think that I might have to be tanking the whole inside of it, which is like a waterproof coating around the inside, and then, or maybe even around the outsides. So the idea that it was coming over the top was better for me. So I decided to press on with the aquaponics system. It hadn't flooded again since the first flood, which had been quite a while. So I was hoping that it was just an extreme circumstances that led to the first flood. So I pushed on and got all the IBC totes cut to the right size and slid under the benches, all ready to go. I painted them up into the black so that they don't let through any sunlight, and plumbed them all together. Once they were plumbed together and all ready to go, we had the second flood. So it turns out that it wasn't just an extreme circumstances, it was just flooding. Just so happened that it was straight after the fact that I'd done some extra work on it. It just seemed to coincide nicely, like last time, with me doing a bit of work in there, just to say, oh, actually, no, I'm not going to make it that easy for you. I thought it's probably best to try and sort out this drainage. I'll talk about this as something else because it was such a mammoth task. It's now finished, the drainage, and we're at the stage where it hasn't rained heavily, but the drainage is all in and sorted. I'm at the stage where I kind of want it to rain heavily to see if it does flood, whilst finger crossing and hoping it doesn't, because if it does, I don't know what the next step is. So that's where I'm kind of at the moment. We've got the grow beds in, lined with rubber. We've got the sumps in, all plumbed together. The drainage is all complete. The mushroom shed's ready for lining. I've put the sauna engine in, and the electrics have gone into the garage, and we're pretty much at the final stages of every single one of the projects, but they're all fiddly little tasks to do. So hopefully I'm going to push on and get them all finished in this summer, in the next couple of months. So I'll video log it and give you more up-to-date info as we go along. Thanks again for watching. You can like it if you want and subscribe.